Hi, loves. Good morning. Happy Friday. This is my husband, Dan, Sexy Silver Fox. We just got asked a question. And by the way, we are Pleasure in the Bedroom and Bank. Why we'd love to call ourselves that is I am a spiritual visionary business coach. And one of the things I love to talk about is money. In fact, my sweatshirt today says money magnet and the energy of money, wealth consciousness, abundance consciousness. And my hubby here, you want to tell them a little bit about you, my love?
Yeah, I'm a certified financial planner at IG Wealth, so I deal with money all the time. I take a bit of a different approach. I'm more on the practical side, and Roz is more on the energetic side.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a good dynamic that we have.
And so we actually have put out money workshops and talks. So that's something like we super love to do, and we practice what we preach. Now, one of the questions that we got asked recently was, what do you do when one partner, because this is very common, what do you do when one partner is growing and evolving more in the personal and even spiritual direction, and the other partner chooses not to?
Yeah, one person openly embraces change and development and growth, whereas the other person won't even look at it.
Yeah.
Won't even consider it.
So what do you do in that circumstance? So maybe what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about our experience, because we are two different people on different journeys, but we also find a way to still be connected on a common ground level, and that level of making sure that we are a strong foundation as a couple.
We use our differences as a strength rather than a weakness.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of the answer, is use your differences as a strength. So for me, and as we're talking about ourselves in terms of helping you understand to answer this question, hopefully this will give you further insight into how to handle this when one partner, whether that's you or your partner, is growing, evolving, and the other partner is choosing not to, because it's not your belief system. Okay, that's okay. So that's what we want to start off with, is nobody is better than the other person. All right, so immediately, if you believe that if you're the partner that's growing and evolving, and there's some sense of judgment because your partner isn't doing the same thing, that somehow that's less than. Okay. And so that might not even be a conscious thought, but it's just like, it can be really frustrating, right? I get it. Like, personally, I started the personal growth journey before Dan did, and particularly with spirituality. And I would say still to this day, I'm a lot more woo than my husband.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm psychic, and he still isn't totally like 100% bought into that. And, to be honest, that sometimes is a tough one for me. It's like, but like, I'm telling you all of these amazing things that happen with my clients in my Akashic record readings with them. They're sending testimonials. Like, I'm seeing these things. And what your response is, he's not unsupportive. Like, I'll make that really clear.
I'm open to it.
Skeptical.
That being said, the logical part of me is saying, there's reasons for certain things happening, right? There's always a practical reason for things. So just because, something happened in your life because you predicted it or whatever the case is, doesn't mean it was because of, how do I say this? Like it comes from practical sources, right? So that's my perspective on it.
Shalon. Yeah. So then with this, I need to, like, I'm triggered. I'm like, oh, like, my own husband not that he doesn't believe me, but he's not right in there. And so I have to remember that he's got a different belief system, and I need to respect that. And he respects mine. He doesn't shut me down. So that's the important piece, is that when you are in a relationship and you are two different people, you're still two separate individual beings. And that's a good thing. Otherwise, if you are if you are allowing your partner to like their opinions to really affect you in such a way that you get taken out, that's not healthy.
There's that codependency there, which is not healthy in a relationship, right?
Yeah.
You can certainly have different opinions, different thoughts about things, and it shouldn't impact you personally just because they have a different opinion on it.
Yeah, so there's 3 different we'll say types of relationships. So there's codependency, which is what we're talking about. And then of course everything's on a spectrum, right? So with codependency, it's almost like you cannot emotionally separate yourself from each other. So how you feel, and this is different than being an empath, okay? So if he's in a bad mood, all of a sudden I feel like, okay, I'm gonna allow myself to be in a bad mood too.
You share
and
the
vice
energy.
versa.
Yeah.
Or if you choose to do something, I take that personal. If I choose not to do that thing, oh, you'd rather do that than be with me, right? So that's the energy of codependency, and then the opposite of that is independent. So when you're no, is it independent? What's the term?
Interdependent.
No, that's one of them. But like it's the opposite of codependence. So I think it's independence.
Independence.
Yeah, where you're almost like roommates, right? So there is you cohabitate together, but you are roommates. You don't really emotionally connect. You don't really connect at all. And so obviously that's not ideal to be in that kind of relationship. And so the ideal way to be is interdependent, that you are 2 individual beings and the relationship is where you come into, but you're still recognized, you're still a complete whole being, whether you're in a relationship or not. Okay, so a lot of times, and most couples fall into some form on that spectrum of codependency. And we learned that too when we were in Mexico for a couples retreat with our coach. Yeah, with Integrity Seminars, Rayanne with Integrity Seminars. Amazing, by the way. One of the best personal development things we've done for ourselves as a couple. And we learned that we were moving towards interdependence, but still on some spectrum, even though we were a power couple still at that point. You know, like we took a quiz and you were like, oh my gosh, I'm still noticing.
Yeah, it was an eye-opener to see when you take an outside perspective and look at what our relationship is like. And then I'm like, okay, I guess I would define myself as more dependent on my wife's emotional being, right? I hadn't reached the state of interdependence where I thought I had been, right?
And that was actually, I think, a really profound moment, because at that point, when I was taking quiz, I really felt like I was more in the interdependent. And we were like, I recognized I was in the codependent. And again, everything's on a spectrum, right? There's these super crazy, I shouldn't say crazy, I'm not labeling, but extreme side of codependency, where that is where abuse happens. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, that's where, and codependency at the extreme ends and the most unhealthy, that's where abuse lands. And then the other end of a spectrum on the, if there is a healthier side of codependency, right? You just notice that there's a little bit of like, like, do we get triggered even as interdependent couples? Yes, of course, right? But interdependent couples can quickly recover and be like, yes, I respect that. That's your boundaries. I'm okay with that. That's not personal. And you're able to communicate what's coming up for you. Whereas in codependency, it's harder to. The skills aren't quite there yet. So then you take things more personal, and then the drama happens.
One of the biggest learnings that I've taken away from these years of doing personal development is ask clarifying questions, right? If Roz comes to me and she says, oh, I don't like your shirt, previously I would have been like, you don't like what the heck? Like, why are you insulting me, right? Whereas I can take a step back, take 2 seconds, say, okay, so what do you mean by that? And then she might say, oh, I just don't like that color. I'm like, oh, it's got nothing to do with me. It's something superficial, right?
Right. Ask for clarification.
Yeah, clarification is important to me.
Yes. And so with
the Besides, I like my shirt. It's got two
It's so
cans on
cute.
it. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love you.
We're gonna gross everyone out.
So
here.
coming back to the question of how do you deal with when one partner is more on that growth, personal, spiritual path, and the other partner is choosing not to. So how do we know they're choosing not to? Is because you may come home, let's say you're the partner that's growing and evolving, right? And that's likely who's going to be watching this, right? Maybe, but I also hope the partner that chooses not to is watching this too, so you can get some insight. That this is where you, even though it's not your belief system, it's important to be interested in what your partner's interested in. Like, be curious. Like, oh, tell me more about that. Like, tell me how this impacts you. How is this supporting you? How is this in a beautiful way, curious way, not a judgmental way, of course.
And
right?
it's one thing to change and expand yourself and grow. But it's also a completely different thing where you're choosing not to even look at that. If you're considering, maybe I should look at different perspectives on things, that's fantastic. But if you say, no, I'm happy in my comfort zone, I'm happy where I am, I don't want to stretch at all, I don't want to consider anything else, then that's where relationships diverge. And quite often when people have such differing perspectives on personal growth, that's where relationships fall apart.
It can, yeah, for sure. But there's, we don't want to leave you in like there's no hope here. Okay, the thing is, it's to remember that you're together for reasons that have brought you together, and you have to remember, ground yourselves in that. What are the common things you bond over? Mm-hmm. Focus on those things. So maybe it's not the spirituality for, in this case. Maybe it's like you guys love to go for walks and you love to be in nature together. Maybe it's you love to play cards and board games together. Find ways to go and because here's the thing. Spirituality, it's in you, and it's a way of being. It's a way of life. So for those of you who are the ones that are growing and evolving, let this be a practice for you. Let this, so for example, I'll take myself and my brother. My brother is the opposite of me. We would not be friends if we were not related. He's very introverted. And again, I'm not judging. I am speaking some facts here, okay? But I will catch myself in judgment. So I'll tell you about this. So he's introverted. I'm extremely extroverted. He's more on the extreme side of introversion, to the point where sometimes he has social anxiety, and he's very he's been growing, but it's been, we'll say, in the realm of like I grow very fast. It's because it's my obsession. It's my passion to grow and do self-growth. And for my brother, it's a totally different world. He's much more hands-on. He's much more, it's interesting. I'll tell you about that after, but he's much more, like more in his logic usually. But the interesting piece is my brother is actually very intuitive. He can actually see. He sees his guides. He can feel his jaguar, his power animal around him. And he hasn't quite embraced that world as much to explore that. Now, as his sister, his big sister, who is very woo and very, like, oh my God, this is exciting, it's difficult for me to be like, why wouldn't you just go and dive in all these like personal development courses and just like go head in and go like full on, like, holy moly, who are you going to become? You guys know that's my bold, sexy warrior attitude. And my brother's just like, oh my God, right? And so how do I deal with this? Spirituality. Sorry, babe. Can I just finish my sentence?
Yeah, for
okay.
Sure.
Spirituality is like, okay, so remembering that perhaps. And Tracy Montgomery, who is my friend, an SRT therapist and massage therapist, she was the one that pointed out in one of my sessions with her, it's like, remember that, because I want to work through some of the tension I had with my brother, because that's what I have control over, right? I don't have control over if my brother decides to change or not. I have control over how I respond to that. And I noticed I wasn't reacting in a way that I wanted. It was taking me out energetically. And so this can also happen in partnerships, right? So you can work on yourself. So this is about me mastering the lesson. So if I'm going to practice spirituality, this is a perfect opportunity. People who trigger you, this becomes your medicine. And so for me, it was recognizing that not everybody's soul contracts here are to evolve. And I was like, what? What? Not everyone comes to Earth to not evolve? So my brother's purpose could be literally to help me evolve even more by him choosing not to evolve, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And that shifted things for me. Now, does that mean sometimes I still react? Yes. Right? I'm like, okay, pull back, Roz. Right? And so was there something you want to add there?
Yeah, I also just want to mention, sometimes it takes a little bit of prodding. Like Roz's brother, once you get him to open up and converse about spirituality, there's some deep thoughts there, but he will never initiate a conversation. And I think that often in relationships too, just opening up the line of communication about it is vital, because everyone's got thoughts on their minds. Everyone's got something to say. Some people just hold back until you give them a safe space to release that. Right?
Yes.
So even the person who, in all these courses that we take is, you can look at these people and you can kind of have these impressions about them. But then when you have a conversation, some people just blow my mind. I'm like, I never thought that you were on this path in life,
Yeah.
It's amazing. So communication, as with anything else, communication is key, right?
Absolutely. I love that you shared that, because in this way you are staying curious. You cannot be curious and judgmental at the same time. So coming back into partnerships, stay curious about each other and about each other's passions and interests, right? Like, I never used to be into investments and stocks and shit like that. Good shit. No. Good shit. Like abundance, right? Like we don't learn this in school. And so getting curious about it instead of like, that's my husband's thing, has allowed me to grow in that area. And it has allowed me to take interest, because my husband's interested in it and it's his career and business. And also, really, it's also my money too, right? Like, I want to take interest in what happens with my money. And that's a way of respecting money and going to relationship with money. And so it's finding it's more about how you enter your relationship. It's like, again, I'm going to just say curiosity. I think that's one of the biggest strength you can take into your relationship and use it as a foundation. Be curious with each other, explore with each other. I mean, come on, sex? We don't want vanilla sex. Like, explore, right? I'm just going to say it. Explore different positions, explore different techniques.
With me? Huh? Well, I hope so.
Hey, we want to bring in another person. Explore different ways, and honestly, like, one of the things that we have been exploring is tantric sex. And so it's been amazing to open up, and tantric sex is actually very spiritual sex. So, hey, if your partner is not spiritual, but you want them to be,
good way to bring them into that realm, right? Yeah.
There's another tip, right? And what I've noticed about Dan, because you are the more logical one, but you're also so open, babe. And I've really noticed that growth. In fact, you've been also reading a book on how Dan holds space. Dan does take personal development, and we've coached together with Rayanne. And do you want to talk a little bit about this book?
Yeah, so basically the premise of it, there's different, I guess, levels of spirituality and how you embrace it and how you apply it in your life. And this identifies where you're at in each of those different levels, and how it's safe and easy to move from what the preconceived notions of manhood used to be, where we're at right now as a society, and then where almost an ideal place would be in the future, in terms of how we can embrace both the masculine and the feminine side in manhood overall, right? So this is one of the books that I definitely want to reread on every 1 or 2 years. So I'm going to be keeping this and referring back to it quite often.
And honestly, I'm going to read this because I'm seriously curious about it, right? So they talk about the animal man, the social man, and the co-creative man. And can you guess which one is the one that ideally we want to move towards?
And honestly, I can see a little bit of me in each one of these three categories, and within each one of those three categories, there's 3 versions of it too, right? So that's where the 9 come out. And yeah, there's a little bit of me in each one of those.
Yeah, and so this might be a really good book if your partner is, I guess, a man, and is the man that isn't as opened, but maybe stay curious and be like, you know what, like, why don't we read this?
Be open to possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they have to jump in.
Yeah. So. I love that, babe. And, speaking about, so I used to be a marriage and family therapist. So I've worked with tons of couples. I understand systemic family systems. And one thing I notice is when you come together, you're coming together not always at the same frequency. So one person may be a rescuer and the other person's a victim. Right? And for the rescuer, and so this is inner child stuff, right? The rescuer might be coming in, like they get something out of rescuing, obviously, right? And so that's usually based on a belief system. But now what might happen is, as let's say the victim person starts to grow and evolve, now you're on, I'm holding the phone so I can't really show, can you just, so here's the rescuer, raise your arm, like you're growing, so grow above me, right? And let's say this person, the rescuer, stays the same. Now look at the dynamics. They're not at the same place. So dynamic wise, this is going to change, and not always for the better. Not always for the better, because now if this person still has a rescue energy, they're no longer feeling fed in this dynamic because this person doesn't need them. By the way, in any relationship, you don't need your person. You want your person. We have everything that we need within us and inside of us, right? You are a complete and whole being. This is why it's so important to do the inner work. So that you don't stay in this dynamic of needing somebody. That's the codependency. And so why it would be really helpful to grow, do your own work and grow together, which is why Dan and I, at the highest level, there's 5 different stages of a relationship. At the highest level is co-creation and contribution to the world. In fact, we are modeling that right now. We're co-creating and we're contributing and sharing with you our own personal experiences and our professional experiences, right? So with this, it's like being aware of how can we stay connected and we're growing together in different ways, in ways that bond us in healthy ways. Maybe it's taking up a totally new activity. Maybe it's reading a book together and then having your own private book club.
Before
right?
COVID got crazy, I actually said we should do some dance classes together. I mean, I can't dance very well, but I'm gonna stretch and do it anyways, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're gonna do bachata classes with Maxwell. So actually, I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, I still want to do those. So finding new activities to do together. So that it's all about be, do, have. We'll maybe end it in this very important very profound lesson we took away in our coaching, right? And so it's a huge part of my why is be, do, have. Be clear, in this case with a relationship, be clear about who you want to become in your relationship, together as well as individuals, right? So, we've been together for, it will be 15 years of marriage in August, and 18 years coming up here right away, together.
19 years together.
Oh yeah, I can't count. 19 years. And so things can get a little, like you can fall into the trap of boring and being automatic and you're right. And this is why Dan and I, we constantly staying connected, having rituals, so having a shower at the end of the day, and that's where we really connect in all sorts of ways. But but in our relationship with our coach, like we were talking with our coach, like we want to explore ways in how we can keep that novelty, that passion, that desire, that sense of like when you meet people, right? Like when you're first starting to date in the honeymoon period, we want to have that in our relationship. And so she got us to talk about what feelings we want to have and how we want to be in our relationship. And here's the thing. The mechanics don't matter so much when you're so clear about how you want to be. Like it just started automatically happening, and we just start getting downloads about how to actually meet that beingness. Right? So did you want to add more about that?
No, that's a very profound point. Yeah, the mechanics don't matter at all.
As soon as you get clear, it's the intention. It's intention that's so important, because all of a sudden then we started to see each other a little bit more, meaning, like really be more present, really be a lot more flirty with each other. Like flirty texts, sexy texts, random times of having sex. Like Dad's like, oh my God.
Everyone knows everything about us now, so yeah.
Whatever. And so we found ways to be more spontaneous and having fun. That was another way we wanted to be, was spontaneity and having more of that. Another really good book to read, 2 different ones, is Mating in Captivity with Esther Perel, where she does talk about, and she's also written The State of Affairs, which is speaking about why people have affairs. Fuck you guys, I love her books. I love her. She's a psychotherapist who speaks in 1,000 different languages and works globally. If you haven't heard of Esther Perel, please YouTube her. You will love her. And mating, so she talks about why people have affairs from a really non-judgmental place. And even happy couples cheat. And so as I was reading this, I love the way she just approaches this. And a lot of times why couples, even if they're happy and they one person or both people have affairs, is because it doesn't mean that they love the other person any less. Honestly, I feel like everybody, I do believe, and my spirit is, people are polyamorous. I mean, look at how many affairs there are, right? Monogamy, and even this is in the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. He says that marriage is, and I'm probably going to trigger some people here, marriage is an institution that keeps ego alive. So fears, jealousy, right? It keeps things dampened and our truth dampened, where at the most enlightened level, we can have life mates, right? Our soulmate, like here, but we have multiple soulmates, and you can have different soulmates, but this is your life partnership in this lifetime. And so that's a really interesting concept. So going back to what Esther Perel says about one of like the main reason happy couples cheat is because it's a transcendental experience, meaning there are certain people that bring out something in you, out of you, that has always been in you, but it's been like a catalyst so that you are, I'll talk about a little bit more of a concrete example. There's like the mom, right, who is bored at home, who goes day in, day out, doing the same thing. Wake up, get the kids ready, go to work, come home, cook dinner, blah, 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 right? Like, where is the passion in that? Right? And so maybe her husband is like busy working. They have a great relationship. They have a great connection. But like, where is the excitement in that? And Esther Perel in Mating with Captivity talks about how it's such a paradox that, that we, and this is what society believes, is that we rely on our partner to make us happy, to be that person who sparks a passion and the desire and everything. But like, desire happens with space. Desire happens when there's space between you both, in a good way, right? It's that longingness. And so that's something that is important to bring into your relationship, in a committed relationship. So it's no wonder that people, instead of turning towards each other, turn outside and are sparked by other people, right? And there's absolutely no judgment about this. Like, that is human psychology right there, right? And so, oh my God. Okay, I said I'd leave this on one point, but clearly we need a TV show. What do you guys think, right? So...
Yeah, to sum it up really quickly, I mean, some people you just feel a vibe from. You just connect with them energetically, right?
Yeah.
And it can be a friend, it can be a random stranger, but you just feel something different about them, right? Or it could be a soulmate, right? And so it's interesting how we can't explain where we get that energetic feeling from, but we just do with certain people.
And so notice that. What is it about this person, whether it's in your marriage or outside, that's sparking this part in you? And how can you have this part be catalyzed? Not that I will say it's not wrong. Okay. There are relationships where people will catalyze. I mean, I have many soulmate friends, right? And they will bring up parts of me that my husband doesn't bring out in me. And that's okay, right? What kind of freaking pressure would that be if I expected him to bring that out of me?
He can't be everything to everyone, right?
Exactly. So being able to reflect on that, and then how do you bring that from the relationships outside your marriage? How do you bring that back, those parts that get catalyzed within you to come back in here and create that? Because now it's such a beautiful way of being with each other as we expand and we see how we show up a little bit more in that expansion with each other. So in that case, it feels new. So what I'll say is, if your partner is choosing not to, or if you are the partner that's choosing not to grow like as a person, absolutely no judgment on that. And I hope that you start to take interest in your partner and in terms of, what are they passionate about? What can I learn from my partner as they're growing and evolving? And partners who are growing, evolving, be very conscious about coming across as opened. Sometimes people can come across as condescending, like, you don't know that, or, like, well, if you took interest, like, stay open, be kind, and be in that place of educating and inspiring and inviting, right? Otherwise, if you're not inviting and you're coming across as what like, God, it's about time, or like some sort of like vibe that's not inviting, that's going to turn your partner off. So be aware.
It doesn't matter what you say, your partner's going to be turned off by your energy.
Exactly. Yeah. So never impose, always stay open and inviting, and share with each other. Even schedule check-in dates. Check-in dates are really awesome. Maybe it's every Sunday we have our time together to connect for an hour, and we go for walks, and the purpose of that time is to check in with each other and say, hey, how are you? What have you learned this week? What are your wins? Right? I mean, I even do that as a business coach. Is every Friday, it's like, I ask my clients, what are your wins? Right? And you can even talk about what are your intentions for this coming week. I do that with my clients. That can apply to your personal life. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope that this inspires you guys.
There was a lot to digest.
Yeah. And watch this, bookmark this, save this, because this is, I really believe, God, I think we probably talked about the last 3 years of our personal development growth and what has helps us to be, do, and have where we are right now. We have it all. We do. We feel so rich inside, and it reflects in our relationship. It reflects in the way we show up in our life. So we hope the same for you, and whatever that fulfillment feels like for you. Thanks for tuning in, my loves.
Have a great Friday.
Bye.